Hey everybody, this is Buster Boyd, and I am a Bespoke Barber. So, I've received enough questions over the email in the last month or so asking me how I got into hair that I thought I'd talk a little bit about my story. And I've also had a lot of people asking me if I always knew that I wanted to do hair. And basically, the answer is yes, I did always know that I wanted to do it. It's always been attractive to me, and it always seemed like a lot of fun to me. So, um, to kind of get into my story a little bit, the neighborhood I grew up in, there was a family that lived two doors down, and they had four daughters and a son. And I was great friends with the majority of them. And I hung out in their house just as much as I did anyone else's. And so I was kind of raised there in their house. And the kind of the family business was a salon there in town where I'd always gotten my hair cut, and a lot of the other people in the neighborhood would go to get their hair cut. And these guys had done a great job putting together an environment that to me had always seemed like a lot of fun. The music was awesome, the outfits were cool, the girls were pretty, and I loved to get my hair cut. And of course, just like anybody else, I loved to get my hair washed by somebody else. So I spent a lot of time around the salon, and when I became familiar with it, and taking even a step further back from there, when I was in preschool with a lot of my friends in the neighborhood, the woman who ran the preschool had put together this preschool in her basement. And a couple weeks in to the preschool, I had noticed there was a lot of noise coming from a couple rooms away there in the basement, and so I wanted to know if I could check it out. So she introduced me to her son Brett, who taught me how to play the drums at age 5. And the most important lesson that he'd ever taught me um, was definitely how to play by ear. And he taught me how to pick apart music. He taught me how to recognize the bass line and the melodies and the guitar parts, and to tell which instruments were what, and especially, of course, how to pick out the drums and how to feel the beat, not just listen to it, but how to kind of turn it into a little bit of a dance where it was very involved with movement and rhythm. So he taught me how to really easily pick out drum beats and how to play them. And and so the rest of my upbringing in the neighborhood there was very centered around hair and music. So even into high school, of course, always being interested in style, fashion, what attracts people to each other, and stuff like that, as well as music. Um, all through high school, I'm sure I was playing the drums probably anywhere from about 3 to 4 hours a day, practicing day in, day out, into the night. And instead of going to prom, I'd play the drums and stuff like that. So by the time I had graduated high school in the year 2000 and looking into college and other types of things that I should be doing, um, the environment that I grew up in, the neighborhood and culture that I grew up in, had told me that men were supposed to do certain things and women were supposed to do other things. And so for me, as a guy, I had understood that it would be important for me to become a doctor or an attorney or an architect or something like that. That would be very masculine and very manly for me. So I began studying in the university. I was an exercise science major, and for about 2.5 years, I studied anatomy and physiology and nutrition, and I had my cadaver labs and my dissection labs, and I got a job as the head trainer at a Gold's Gym, where I was prescribing fitness programs for people and helping them to train themselves, and I was having a great time the whole time, and I thought that I kind of found my niche. Um, but one of the classes that I'd always put off, among others like statistics, I'd always put off my economics class to the very end. I was not excited. A lot of people around campus would always kind of buzz that economics was the worst, and it was hard, and it was weird, and that the book was expensive, and the teachers were hard. So I had put it off as long as I possibly could, but the time had come. I had to take my economics class or I wouldn't graduate. So I found myself in economics class, bought the book, and went to class. And I'd say that one class, that one economics class, probably changed my life more than any other class that I've ever taken. Not only did I learn a lot about economics and business and stuff, but I was surprised at how behavioral and how human economics was, especially in the beginning. So I was really intrigued by the whole way of thinking. It was a new world for me. It was a new way of seeing the world, and understanding human behavior and why we do what we do. So I became slightly obsessed with economics and changed my major and studied business and economics. And um, towards the end, it even sprinkled in a few graphics design courses because I knew that at some point I'd want to have my own business. So I took some graphic design so I could do some basic stuff on my own and I wouldn't have to hire it out. So I've always been uh, really into learning. I love learning. I love reading and studying and researching and asking questions. But I've always been also very visual and creative and artistic with music and stuff like that too. So the graphic design was really interesting to me as well. So by the time I was done with my studies at the university, I was looking at jobs and trying to figure out what would be interesting enough that I could do it for more than a year or so at a time. And all of the jobs that my friends were looking at and getting just seemed like they'd be really hard for me to do. I just didn't think I could stick with them or do them for more than just a couple years at a time. So getting back to music and kind of getting back to those roots, I was thinking, I'm young. I don't have a whole lot of responsibility right now. If I'm ever going to try music, it's got to be now. There won't ever be a better time for me to give it a try, to become a rock star. And so I figured, I'm going to take the next year and a half, and I'm going to make it happen. I told myself it wouldn't be good enough just to try. I just had to go for it. I just had to do it. And that was about the time that I started to get tattoos as well. So those who know me know that I have a few tattoos. I don't have a ton, but I've got a few. And kind of what sealed the deal for me was when I started to get more visible tattoos. I'd heard an interview with Travis Barker from Blink-182, and he had mentioned that when he started to get tattoos, part of the decision for him was that he knew if he got enough tattoos, he could never get a real job. And for him, that was just part of his commitment. And he decided that that he wasn't going to look back. And once he got as many tattoos as he did, that he couldn't look back. There was no other option than to make it as a rock star. So that kind of impacted me, and I started to get more tattoos. And I bought a drum set, and I started to build my portfolio. I was recording drum covers and putting them on YouTube and building a portfolio and networking. I was spending a lot of time at night in bars and clubs and concerts and hanging out with bands and looking for opportunities to help other drums out with the tech side of things, setting up the sound, moving their drums. I'd volunteer to just be kind of their drum tech, their drum slave. So I was hanging out with different bands and meeting people, and I was starting to meet other people who were looking to put together musical projects. I was meeting sound guys and sound engineers and stuff like that, and trying to figure out how I could make it in music and how I could have everything that I'd ever dreamed and be a rock star. So there was one band in particular that stood out to me. These guys were having fun, and they had cool style, and they had great energy, and they were making it happen, and they were doing everything that I thought I wanted to do. So I really started to emulate, kind of hang around and see what I could gather from this band. And their lead guitar player, it turned out, was a hairdresser. And I really started to re-examine that. He had mentioned that, especially for me at the time, he's like, dude, you have to have a day job. We all do. We'd all love to just play music and have that be our job, but all of us still have our day jobs, and we're all still making it work. So I started to think about hair, and it wasn't more than a couple weeks later that in the local newspaper here I saw an article that had mentioned that this certain gentleman, this lead guitar player, was opening his own salon in town, and that was really interesting to me, and I was kind of jealous. I remember thinking, wow, that's a cool idea. And not only did the music not distract him from what he was doing, but it was a big part of the brand of what he was doing. So I read the article, I scouted the location, I went over and checked it out, and fortunately for me, they hadn't opened yet, and it was still going to be a little while before they did. So I started to hang around the salon, and I had contacted the owners, and I said, hey, anything I can do, I'd love to be a part of this. I want to learn a little bit more about the industry. I want to understand the job. I want to know more about the environment, and this place seemed really cool to me. So at first they didn't really know what I was up to or why I'd want to hang around for free and work for free. So I just said, just trust me, I'd love to come around. You don't have to pay me. I'll help get you guys set up with Facebook and Twitter and blogs and online stuff. So they said, sure, show up. So I did, which surprised them, and we started to work together. And I learned a lot of great things, and I got to know the stylists, and I was hanging out with the owners, and they were inviting me to the employee barbecues, and I just couldn't imagine a better place to be. The music was good, the visual was awesome, the decorations were cool, the clients were attractive and interesting people, and one of the other owners would kind of pop in and out, and he seemed to me at the time to be a pretty serious dude, and I didn't really feel like I could approach him right away. He just seemed so busy and important to me. But as I got to know him and build kind of a relationship with him, he really became a great mentor to me. And he said, you know, the next step would be going to school. You got to get into school, you got to get your license, you got to get behind the chair and start making money. So I had heard a commercial just a few weeks later on the radio for the local hair school here. It was at Paul Mitchell School, and I looked him up, and I heard the commercial. And the funny thing was, I don't remember hearing any other commercials, and they don't ever remember putting those commercials on the air. So I'm not sure how it happened, but a few days later, I ended up at the Paul Mitchell School. I was taking a tour with their admissions leader, and I couldn't imagine that such a place existed that was so full of attractive people and cool outfits and awesome hair and great music, and there were videos playing, and it was so dynamic, and there was just color everywhere. So I had a great initial impression of the Paul Mitchell School, and it was big and busy and full of energy. So I just remember specifically thinking, "God, this is like a really high fashion and modern version of Hogwarts, where all this magic was happening and people were coloring and cutting hair and having fun and laughing and eating lunch, and just I couldn't think of anything better." So I signed myself up. I got into the Paul Mitchell School, started to study hair, and during the course of the study there, they gave us a lot of opportunities to try to compete for additional training. So because of a few fashion shows and photo shoots and styling contests, I was fortunate enough to earn my way onto a few advanced academy trips, and we went to California, where I studied more advanced cut and color techniques in San Francisco, which was awesome. And most any opportunity I had to kind of win a trip somewhere, I would definitely go for it. And Paul Mitchell also has a really cool event called Caper that they hold each year for their students. So I did what it took to get myself onto the Caper trip as well in Las Vegas, and I went, and I met some really cool people, a lot of great mentors on their Advanced Academy cutting team and color team, and had a really rare opportunity to kind of hang out with them, because one thing that I had always done since grade school basically was I would work with leather. So I started to put together kind of hair-specific holsters to hold scissors and combs and stuff like that. So I'd put together these holsters, and a lot of the Advanced Academy people for Paul Mitchell were buying them, so I got to meet them and kind of trade leather goods for mentorship and information. So about 14 months later, I graduated from the Paul Mitchell School, and I had every intention of working for my friends who I'd met in the music biz, and work at their salon in town, which was just so cool. And when the time came, they had the opportunity to sell their salon to some of the stylists, and so it went under kind of an overhaul, and things were still great, still awesome, but the structure of the salon had changed a bit, so it wasn't really an option for me. So I looked into working at some of the local barber shops. I had already found by then that I was gravitating a little bit more towards doing men's hair than women's, but I was still doing, I'd say my clientele consisted of about 70% women, maybe 30% men at the time. But I looked at and interviewed with one of the local barbershops, kind of the place to be, and they were interested in hiring me to work there. I had a portfolio together already and had done quite a few photo shoots, so I had to make a decision right then whether I was going to work for someone else or if I wanted to do something of my own. And I've had every job under the sun since I was about 15. You name it, and I've done it. Literally had almost every job you can think of. So just on a whim kind of decided, it's time for me to do something for myself. And I knew that the branding, creating a culture, telling a story would be a lot more rewarding for me if it was for my own business. So I started the Absinthe Parlour, which is a bespoke barbershop and hair salon. We do receive both male and female guests, but half the salon is a hair salon and the other half is a grooming parlor for men. We opened our doors just over a year ago, so that would be the late part of 2010, December of 2010. We've been open for almost a year and a half now, and things are going great. And even more so now, I found myself really gravitating towards men's styles, men's fashion, and barbering. So that's kind of the medium-long story about how I got into hair through music and fashion and girls and clothes, and I've always thought it was really attractive. And a lot of my mentors over the last bit have always encouraged me to just follow your passion, scratch your own itch, and you just go for it. So right now, it's been quite a while since I've started to specialize in barbering and men's cuts and styles. So over the course of the last bit, working with other barbers as well, I've developed kind of my brand or my story, which is bespoke barbering or bespoke men's hairdressing, which is kind of become my philosophy on hair and style, which I've talked about and will continue to talk about in other videos. But here I am, owning and operating the Absinthe Parlour, and you can check us out. We're always happy to answer questions, especially any personal questions that people have on hair, barbering, or business, any of that type of thing. You're always welcome to email me, submit your questions on the blog, and I'm always happy to answer those questions. So hopefully that gives you some information on how I got into hair and why I do what I do. And like I said, we'll be discussing a lot more about my philosophy and kind of my mission statement when it comes to hair in other videos and other episodes. But thanks for listening, and if you have any other questions, like I say, feel free to get a hold of me. Thanks.